In today's live stream, I am looking at Loupe Deck. It's a pretty hot topic at the moment, at least it is in my studio. Not least because Loupe Deck version 5.0 was, 5.1 I should say, was released yesterday. So this is an update to the software that you use to actually program your Loupe Deck. And it's got some nice new additions to it actually, and some things that I think are going to make it easier for people to use. But nevertheless, there are still a number of things that I found quite confusing, shall we say, with the Loupe Deck in terms of how you go about programming it and get it up and running. And I know I'm not alone in that. I've had a lot of feedback from people who've said that they've also felt the same. Good friends have sent theirs back. Very intelligent, tech-savvy people who have sent theirs back because there is some level of sort of friction in terms of getting to grips with how to program it. And indeed, for me, this is really a confession from a self-confessed geek, tech geek. The Loupe Deck sat on my desk literally doing nothing for about 3 months. And the reason being that every time I came to start to get into it, it just seemed like it was there was some friction there in terms of the UI, the way to program it, and I just couldn't really get into it, to be totally honest. I had other things going on as well, so it was a case of, seems like I'm going to have to invest quite a bit of time to just get up to speed with this. And so, one thing and another, it was just never prioritized. And that's never a good sign, really, because for me, because I am one of these people who, if I get some new gadget or tech, piece of tech or something like that, I'll just dive straight into it and immerse myself into it and, really get sort of up to speed and learn all about it. Speak of the devil. Hello, Keely. Yeah, I know we have very similar thoughts here on the Loupe Deck. So with this new software update that came out yesterday, there has been some improvements made, but really there is still sort of a load of things that are not so great about the user interface. Now, one of the things that I've been intending to make for my channel is the beginner's guide to the Loupe Deck, just the same as I've got the beginner's guide to the Stream Deck, which is basically 5 videos, about 20-30 minutes each video, and that'll take you from just starting out with the Stream Deck, exactly what it is, how to set it up, and various other different things so that you can be up and running with it. I've been meaning to make that same video series for the Loupe Deck, and in fact I actually made it yesterday and the day before and it was sitting in my queue in my in my YouTube studio, or not in my queue, but I just started uploading it. So here you can see that we've got my LDBG, Loupe Deck Beginner's Guide 1, Loupe Deck Beginner's Guide 2, Loupe Deck Beginner's Guide 3. I just finished recording the 4th video, and was going to upload that one when I got an email in my inbox saying that the new Loupe Deck software was just out. So I'm actually going to be going and remaking these videos because they're technically sort of out of date. There's stuff that's going to be done slightly differently now. But nevertheless, the actual process of making these videos, it's been the hardest set of videos that I've had to make, because when I make my tutorial videos, what I try and do wherever possible, in all cases I try and do this, I should say, is basically make it sort of take the difficulty out of whatever it is, if people have sort of perceived difficulty around things. So I try to take people through on a logical series of steps from, opening up the app and then come on to, how to do whatever it is that the app is intended to do. It's been a real nightmare to actually simplify the Loupe Deck experience because it does not seem logical. I have not found a way to tell people how to go through a logical series of steps with it because there's just so many things that are just really quite odd and weird about it. And so whilst I've tried to simplify it in my beginner's guide, and I'll go through and re-record them and also try and simplify it there again, there are some things that are just a little bit strange. And so what I wanted to do today was basically go through all of my issues, really. I don't tend to do sort of critical reviews of things. I tend to be, Mr. Positive, just telling people how easy things are and so on. But I really want to do this for the Loupe Deck because, first of all, I will obviously be submitting all of this feedback to the developers themselves. But it's also to sort of show you some of these issues that I've had. Maybe you've had those as well if you are a Loupe Deck user, and also show you kind of like the solutions to them as well and the ways around them, so that you can actually get some use out of it if you have been struggling. I mean, the video that I posted yesterday about version 5.1, the first comment I got on there was, I really wish they would just make this as simple as Stream Deck. And there is always going to be this comparison. Perhaps we've been spoilt with Stream Deck, who knows? But certainly this is not a device that I would ever recommend to anybody who isn't, a little bit tech savvy. I know that's a bit of a weird word, really, isn't it? Where do you draw the line, sort of thing? But I could quite happily, get my mum set up with a Stream Deck and let her be on her way. Whereas I certainly wouldn't say, here's a Loupe Deck and figure this one out. It's just a little bit complex. So this is all one massive big caveat to say that, this is going to be a bit of a negative stream in some ways, in that I'm picking fault with things, but it's only to highlight the ways around these issues that you may also be having. And the timing was I just could not believe it, Keely. I was literally just in the process of, as I say, finishing one video. And I'd actually stopped between doing the 4th and the 5th. I was just going to get all my thumbnails done. I wanted a break from the recording. So I was just in the process of making the thumbnails, and then that email come in. It was pretty amazing. But I'm glad it came in then rather than tomorrow. I would have been rather annoyed if I'd posted this full, 5-part tutorial and then suddenly it's out of date, like within a day. At least it was never released, so it could have been a lot worse. But incidentally, I should just say, these tutorials, they are all in one take generally on my channel. There's an occasion where I've had to chop out a bit in the middle or something like that. But very, very occasionally, maybe 5 occasions or something like that. And I do them all in one take. Now, often I fluff the beginning of it. I mess up the little bit of the beginning part where I say this video is for you if X, Y, and Z, and so I just redo the first 10 seconds or something like that off the video. Not the case with these Loupe Deck beginners guides. I was going into a video and then I'd get to a point and realize that this is not easy to explain, and I'd go back to the beginning again. And probably these videos that I created is probably about 2 hours. They're about 30 minutes each. I reckon I've spent 8 or 9 hours making these videos just because I've stopped and gone back to the beginning. I could have edited, obviously, but I always find that editing takes more time, and I just it's simpler for me to just go and re-record them. So a lot of investment of time. Hopefully, when I do the reruns, they'll actually turn out a lot better because of it, because I will have already gone through it all once or twice already, or 3 or 4 or 5 times. So let me get on to my little update on the update, and then also my sort of remaining issues. I just totally went back to the drawing board, and one of them I got to think about 15 minutes in, and I just thought, you know what, I'm making a complete hash of explaining this, and so I went back to the beginning. So there you go. Anyway, so let's just have a quick look at what the updates are. I did do a full video on this. I've left a link to it in the description with all of the updates to the UI. It's the additional features, I should say. There's not much change with the UI itself. But I'll just quickly run through them. So the first most noticeable thing is we've got this new Marketplace button. Very similar to the Stream Deck Marketplace. So if you click on this, it will open up a separate window on your desktop where you have access to basically profiles, plugins, and icon packs. So very similar to what Stream Deck offers in their marketplace. No sound effects, which is one thing you do get in the Stream Deck marketplace, although I've never really used those anyway. But there you go. So that is the features. I'll be coming on to exactly how these work and issues I see with them as we go forward. But that is one of the main additions that has changed now. So it was always a bit of a pain to add in new profiles. Not a pain, really. That's a bit over the top. But if you wanted to add in one of the profiles from Loupe Deck, then you would click on here, and then you would come down to the Find More App Profiles. That would take you through to a website. You'd download them from the website, and then you'd have to manually import them into the Loupe Deck. Whereas now, it's basically just all with the sort of touch of a button, so you can just basically install them there. Still a couple of issues with this process, but nevertheless, it's a step in the right direction. Plugins, we were always quite limited with plugins on the Loupe Deck. So there was just basically, if I've just set up a sort of default profile here, but we had this list of just these few plugins. There were other plugins that were available sort of when you were in a profile, but it was always hard to access those. This is one of my issues I'll be talking about. But now with the Loupe Deck Marketplace, we do have this plugins section here where you can access more plugins. So it'll be interesting to see if more get added to that, because I noticed now there is actually 10 plugins in here. Just very quickly, the video I made yesterday, there were only 6. and then there were, I think, maybe 7 by last night. So they are actually actively adding in more profiles. So it's good to see that that number is going up. I'll be checking on this over the coming weeks to see how much actual development is going in, how many new plugins that are available. But it is good that you can actually add those in. And finally, we've got icon packs in the store as well. So a way to get icon packs, again, just like we've got with the Stream Deck. And these are usually sort of third-party developers, some here by Loupe Deck, but Sideshow FX, a great resource for full application icon packs. So what they've done is, just as they've done in Stream Deck, they've made a number of their sort of icon packs available as they call them sampler packs. So it's just got a few of their icons, not a few actually, quite a lot. If you click into them, it'll tell you. So this has got 60 icons. So it's actually a really good number of free icons there. And then this is basically to show sort of the quality of their icons. And then you can get their full packs, which are, I think, 300 plus sometimes for some of their applications that are pretty reasonably priced as well. So this is as I say, the icon packs that we've got in the Loupe Deck Marketplace. I'll be coming back to this a little bit later as well. The other thing that's changed within the app, though, is the settings used to be a little sort of cogwheel up at the top here, and then we had our little icon for our account over this side. Now that's basically just merged into this one account tab here with a little arrow, which basically has a drop-down menu, and then the device settings is now there. So this is what was previously that little cogwheel. You've still got your account settings and sign in, sign out here as well. Switch to classic UI, so that is the previous version of the UI that they had before even version 5. That used to be a button up here, but it is now moved into this menu here. And then there's some links to a few video tutorials, the onboarding wizard support, and some legal information down there as well. But we've also got this one here, plugins and assets. So this is where basically you can manage these things that you get from the marketplace. So if you open this, this is basically another window where you can manage the plugins that you've got, and also the icon packs as well. Profiles is one thing that we can get from the marketplace, obviously, but you're going to manage those profiles within this menu here. Okay, so that is basically a summary of what was in the update of 5.1. So then, what is my issue exactly with actually the interface itself? Because on the face of it, it does look pretty similar to the Stream Deck interface, doesn't it? Because we've got a sort of graphical representation of the device over here on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, we've got a list of different actions, and we've also got different different plugins, I should say, over here, so we can change the profile, and it will list all the actions out. So if we think about it, that is pretty similar in layout to Stream Deck, where we've got now we're looking at the Stream Deck interface. We've got a graphical representation of all of the buttons on the Stream Deck, albeit not necessarily quite as pretty with actually the actual picture of the device itself, but nevertheless it's still pretty clear what this is. This is all of the buttons that we've got on the Stream Deck, and then over on the right hand side we've got a list of all of the actions, and they've got a slightly different way of doing it. This is done with more like sort of nested folders, if you like, or nested drop downs. So we've got the different apps or different plugins here, I should say, different plugins, and then when you click the arrow, it expands to show the actions that you've got. Whilst in the Loupe Deck, basically you have the plugins displayed up on the top, and then as you click on one of these, then it will display the actions just down below. But again, very similar. So you would think that these have got a pretty similar approach. However, when you actually dig into using this, in my mind, it becomes a little bit complicated. So I'm going to come to profiles a little bit later, but I want to first look at how they actually deal with the actions themselves. So if I come into this one here, so this is, it says, the icon says OS, and then you hover over it and it says desktop. So this is desktop actions. So this is actions for the desktop, presumably. Well, actually, what it really is it's kind of more like the equivalent of the system actions that you've got in Stream Deck. So in Stream Deck, if I just come over to that for a moment, here we have the system actions, and it's basically all stuff related to the the Mac. So multimedia controls, text, opening files and folders, hotkeys, and then we've got hotkey switch or open a website or something like that. So here we've got a few different system controls. And that is basically what this one here that they call desktop is basically simulating. So there are a number of things related to, again, keyboard, the system, media keys and stuff like that. So on the face of it, you've got some very similar functionality. But the organization of it, to me, it just doesn't make sense. First of all, the first folder that we've got here says activate. Okay, so what is activate? Well, I can guess, if I was to look at that, that is to open an application, because we do often talk about activating applications. I mean, that is most people would say open, I guess, but actually within Keyboard Maestro and things like that, we do talk about activating an application, and that can either mean opening it, or if it's already open, then making it the active application. So that would make logical sense to me, that is going to be the way that you open apps. And indeed, if I drop that down, here you can see we've got some actions to open some apps. But the apps here are rather limited. It is basically the creative apps that, presumably, well, Loupe Deck is intended, and has a heritage of working with creative apps like Photoshop and Illustrator and all that sort of stuff, and also, editing software and stuff. So I can see why there is this here, but you see how we've basically got an individual button for each individual application that you can activate from this menu. So it's Audition, Illustrator, Photoshop, Premiere Pro, Activate System. Not sure exactly what that one is. Last used editing software. So there you can see, obviously, the editing slant on this, which is it's got a button specifically for whatever the last used editing software you used was. And then activate Loupe Deck is to open the Loupe Deck application. So if I had a new page on here, let me just create a completely new page. This, by the way, that I've got is just one of the default profiles, so to just play around with today. So if I drag and drop this on, then there we go. That is a button to open Adobe Audition. What about if I want to open Excel or something like that? Surely there would be a button in here, given that this is all of the system buttons, to open an application. Just as in the Stream Deck, we've got a key for open, and you can just drag this on here, and then you can just choose either an app or file and choose the one that you want. But if I come back here, no, there isn't a button within this activate. This is literally activate only this specific set number of applications. So maybe a little bit confusing if you're hoping to be able to open an app from within the activate menu. Well, let's go on, and presumably it will be somewhere else in here, because this is all of the desktop or system controls, surely. So let's go through and have a look. We've got a whole series of clipboard commands. And one of the things, this is sort of coming on to one of these issues that I've got, is the way that it basically explicitly lists every single potential option that you've got in this massive long list of things. Whereas the Stream Deck's approach to things is kind of like, technically it's like an extra step. Because if you look at the way the Stream Deck works, is like we've just done, we say, what do we want to do? We want to open a website, for example. So there's a button for website. You drag it in there first, and then you type in the URL. The equivalent to that on the Loupe Deck would be if they had just listed every single possible website that you might want to open in the the list. And in fact, that case in point about the app. So open app. Here we've just got a button for open. We know that that's going to open something. What do we want to open? We want to open an app, and we then choose the app. So what it means is this whole list here of actions is a lot less cluttered because of the way that it works. It's basically you're selecting the action you want, and then you're selecting the application that you want to open. It's a lot smoother to do it this way. But let's move on and have a look. So we've got these clipboard actions. I'm not going to go through every single action that there is in here. We've also got some date and time stuff. Okay, if you want to have the clock on there and all that kind of business, then fair enough. I won't dwell on that too much. Then we come to this one, and this is really case in point about listing absolutely everything needlessly into a list like this. Because if I go into keyboard, here we can see every possible keystroke that you might want to actually assign to a key. So let's say you want to have a key just to, type the letter D, for example, if you want to assign keystrokes to them. First of all, I'm not sure quite why you'd necessarily want to do that. Although, perhaps actually having said that, with Photoshop, there is basically one key controls for, V is take you back to the sort of pointer or whatever. So perhaps there is a reason for having this. But I don't necessarily think it's necessary to actually just list every single key down like this. And the other thing that's weird about it is they are in alphabetical order. So it might mean that in some cases, things that you would expect to be grouped quite close together because they are very similar functions are not actually near each other because of their, where they come in the alphabet. So for example, here we've got, this one is for key 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That makes total sense then in that respect because they are just in numbered order. But then what if you want the key letters, you know, A, B, and C? Well, here we come to everything in alphabetical order. So the first keystroke is A, the next one is add, the next one is arrow down, the next one is arrow left, arrow right, arrow up, and then we come to B. Then we've got back tab, break. So do you see what I mean? It's just a bit of a weird way of laying these things out. Now, I am perhaps being a little bit picky here because you can always use the search at the top. So if you wanted to really type the letter B or assign the letter keystroke B to something, then you could do that and it would actually find it. Although having said that, I've just typed B and it's basically showing me everything with the letter B in. So no, actually that wouldn't quite work either. So perhaps I'm right. I just find this whole way though of laying these things out and literally listing every single keystroke like this. So as you can see, we're going to go down the list, down the list. So obviously what comes after F? Well, it's not G, it's F1, F2, F, and in fact, there you go. F1, then it's F10, then F11, F12, F13, and so on until you get to F19, and then it goes to F2, F20. It's just sometimes alphabetical is not the best approach, and I absolutely don't think that it is the right way to do this. So okay, let me just move on from here, and I'll just scroll back up to the top so that I can just minimize this folder. That's another little weird thing. So far we've looked at basically opening a very small select number of applications. We've got some clipboard controls. We've got the date and time so that you can add the clock, the date, the moon phase, and everything like that. I don't think I would ever actually have the clock or things like that on the device itself. I've got a clock on the top of my monitor and also on top of an actual physical clock just over the other side as well. But nevertheless, it's good to have it there, I suppose. Then we got the keyboard and then keyboard modifiers. So this is basically just a list of all of the modifier keys that you've got on your keyboard. So for example, like Shift, Command, and so on, and the one that's on the left, the one that's on the right. So if you wanted to assign a button just specifically for a modifier key, why would you do that? Because you've got the button on your keyboard, you may say. Well, okay, if you've got your hand on the Loupe Deck device itself, then perhaps you just don't want to have to go back to your keyboard. So this would just literally be the same as pressing the Command key on your keyboard. I mean, I can, yeah, I'm trying to be fair here and say, okay, I can kind of see a use case for this, although I would probably just press the key on my keyboard. So that is keyboard modifiers. Okay, so then we come to the Loupe Deck device itself, and these are all just things to control the device. So changing the backlight, stuff like that on the device. Totally, I can see why you would want to have that. In fact, it's nice. It's something you don't have on the Stream Deck. So if you've got a free dial or something like that, you might want to be able to adjust the brightness of it. I'm going to totally give it this. And some other things there you can do as well is rotating the display. So the device is obviously, comes with a stand to sit sort of propped up right on your desk. But you may have it turned over on its side, over to the side of your desk. So it is nice that you can actually rotate the display. Well done on that one. I'm going to try and be balanced. Next, we've got media. So this is pretty straightforward. Just next track, previous track, all that sort of stuff. So no complaints there. Next, we've got mouse. This is another one where it gets to be a long list. You've basically got mouse click left, mouse click right plus command, mouse click left plus control. And it's basically every single click you've got with every single combination of modifier keys. And then you've also got, so that's the clicking. Then you've also got mouse double click with command, control, option, shift, and middle click, double click, command, option. You see what I mean? It just goes on and on and on and on. Then you've got mouse horizontal drag, mouse vertical drag, again with all of those different modifier keys. It's just a massive list. I can't help but think that it would be easier to have like a single one for mouse drag, and then you select, do you want a modifier key with it? It just seems like quite a laborious way to list them, and it makes it difficult to actually find what you're looking for. Is the core issue with this that I've got. Okay, so we've done all of the keyboard stuff, we've done all of the mouse stuff, and we've done some of the media keys. So now we're going to come on to the system. System is basically a button to open Activity Monitor. So activate was to activate an application, but system is where you would go to activate the application of Activity Monitor. It's also where you'd go to activate the Finder, and it's also where you go to activate the system preferences. I feel that there's a little bit of inconsistency there. I feel that that is like more like a sort of open command, but okay, it's in the system section. And then you've also got the brightness up and down, and also the basically the equivalent of command tab to go to the previous app. Not entirely logical. And then we come on to widgets. So this is a few random widgets, a stopwatch. I guess I would have probably put stopwatch in with the date and time, or the things related to clocks and time, but there you go. And then you've got this one, beats per minute, which is beats per minute of music that's playing, presumably. I'm not entirely sure, so I won't say too much about that. And the bell, I'm not sure what that one is either. Let's have a little look what that does. Is that literally just a bell? Not sure what that one is doing. But anyway, that is besides the point. So that is just widgets. So there, we've gone through all of the system things, but there's no real way in there to actually open an app, which is exactly where you would expect to find it in my mind. So if I was going to do something like opening a file, a folder, an app, then I would expect to find it within here, but it isn't there. So that's that. Let's move on and see if we can discover where it might be. The other thing I shall say about this is just in general, I find that there's just a few extra steps that you always have to do with everything in Loupe Deck. So if I wanted to go to this particular one here and I wanted to change the icon, whereas in the Stream Deck, you can literally just drag the icon over onto the the symbol. So here we've got the icon there. You can't actually drag and drop anything onto this icon symbol down here. You have to actually physically click this, and then once it opens this up, then you can drag it and drop it into there. So it's just like an extra little step that you have to do. By the way, those icons that you can now download from the store, if you have downloaded any, then you can easily actually get to that from here. So this bit, I suppose, is a little bit better in that you can then access all of these new icons that you may have downloaded from the store. So that is the the sort of issues with the actual actions themselves. We've got these ones which looks very much like a Safari icon, but is actually a compass. It's the navigation, and it is navigation of the actual Loupe Deck itself. You can navigate between workspaces, so we can assign here. In this one we've got two different workspaces. I'll come on to what workspaces are in a moment. But you can basically assign buttons, so you can flick between those using a button, in the same way that on the Stream Deck you can actually assign a button to switch between profiles. However, what you can't do on Loupe Deck is assign a button to switch between profiles. So you're basically limited to two different ways of working with profiles. Either you have them switch automatically, which I'll come on to in a moment, or you have to physically go into the app to change profile, or you have to go into the menu bar, where you can kind of change profile, but not to actually any one of them. So you're basically limited to either automatically changing apps, automatically changing profiles depending on the app you're in, which I personally don't like, or you have to physically open up the Loupe Deck app to change those profiles. I'll come on to that when I start talking about profiles. And then you've also got some other actions here to basically switch between different pages and switch different pages on the dials as well. So I do like the fact that you've got these controls in here. That is quite a good thing. Basically, anything else, though, that you want to do, unless you have got a plugin for the Loupe Deck, then anything else that you want to do, like open another app, is all down to custom actions. So basically, you need to go into the custom actions, and if you're starting with a blank profile, so if I was to come in here and create a completely new blank profile, so you want to just start yourself and do it, if I go to new empty profile and just call this one test, as always, my go-to name, then basically here it's going to change to a new profile, or is it crashing? Let's have a little look. It does look like it's crashed, actually. 1 second. I need some little waiting music, don't I? Right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually quit that then, and I'm going to try it again. That looked like it just crashed when I created a new profile, which it didn't used to do, in fairness. So I don't know if that is just something related to the latest update. Maybe they're onto me. Maybe they're onto the fact that I'm bad-mouthing them, so they've blocked it. No, it looks like we're there again. Right, so I do need to try and do that again, though. It seemed like it didn't like me doing that, making that new profile. That was the one. Let's see if it will go to it. There we go. So we've got a completely blank profile there. Just another little thing. Every time you create a new profile, they always just start with putting the clock in there. I don't know why that is a default. Certainly, I don't necessarily want it there. So let's just unassign that. Stream Deck does that as well. It always puts that little welcome button in the middle needlessly. But there you go. So, yeah, if I come over here, if I was starting and wanting to just build out my Loupe Deck from scratch myself, then yeah, the iOS, the desktop or system actions that you've got are what we've just seen. If I want to actually open any other apps or anything like that, the only way to do that is to come into custom and actually create custom actions. So, yeah, if I come into here, create a custom action group, new custom action group, click here, and then I need to create a new thing. So run, here we go, is this one. Run is oh hey Ian, great to see you here too. This is an unusual stream for me because I'm being a little bit negative. I try and be positive in everything, but today I'm talking about Loupe Deck, and it is a bit of a source of frustration for me. So yeah, any action that you want to, any application that you want to open or anything like that, it's a case of going in and actually creating a custom action, and then you would give it a name. So here, let's say I wanted to open Microsoft Excel, for example. I would give this a name, Open Excel. And then I would come down here and it would say paste the path or add via a browser. So I'm going to click on here, and then you would just choose the application that you want. So if I find from my apps, let's have a little look. I was going to say that it must be very early in the UK. Oh dear, 6:30 a.m. flight. That's not good if you've been up all night. I'm the opposite. I'm normally getting up at about 3 o'clock, so they're not an issue for me. But yeah, not good to be up so early. So well, I hope you have a safe flight though. So then you would come through here and let me just have a look for Excel. I mean, I can open anything for just as an example. They're probably somewhere else, aren't they? Well, let me just use this one. Just grab any application. So this is basically where you put the file name. So let me call this Dropbox instead. And then click on create. So now I've got an action that's called open Dropbox, and I can now drag that onto here. And then if I wanted to give that an icon, then I would have to go and manually create the icon. So let's just compare the steps that I've had to do there just to even add in a shortcut to open an app compared to with Stream Deck. With Stream Deck, it's literally, I mean, I've done it once already, but it's basically just literally drag to open. And then you choose the file, and it will also grab the it will also grab the app icon and then put that on. Whereas with the Loupe Deck, we've had to go into create a custom action. We've had to give it a name. We've had to go and select the location of it, and then we would have to come in here and actually go and drag an icon on there as well. So that is the bit that is just, to me, like, surely there should be just an action that just says open app or something like that, especially given that they have already done that with some specific apps in here. That is one of the things that I find not too illogical, not too logical, I should say. Then let's have a little look at profiles. That is my issue with the whole actions. And then there again, I mean, all the different custom actions you can do. This can get a little bit confusing as well. The difference between the run, we've got one here for web page, shortcut, macro is basically, the macros are essentially multi-step actions as opposed to these ones which are just like the equivalent of a keystroke or opening a web page, running a thing, running an application, or there's one there for playing a sound or text. But you do have to actually, as I say, go through and actually create these, each one individually, manually, and then a macro is the equivalent of the multi-action that we've got on Stream Deck. So that is basically a summary of my issues with actions. So then we move on to profiles, because in profiles, if we open this profiles menu, then we have got here a couple of different groupings of profiles. We've either got main profile, or we've got application profiles. This, by the way, used to say system profile. or system profiles, I should say. But now they've changed it to main profile. So this is whatever one we've got here working on there. But we've also got these application profiles. Now, as a default, what you're going to have is this thing called dynamic mode will be on. And what that does is it basically automatically changes the profile on your device depending on the application that you're in. So if I was to go in, if I had that on and I was going to After Effects, for example, it would just open that up automatically. I'm with you on that one. There is a good reason to buy the Loupe Deck, which is the dials. I do find those are quite useful, especially with something like Ecamm Live. I use them for adjusting the volume and so on. Yeah, but the interface, as you'll see, is not quite as great. The application profiles, though, this dynamic mode on, that was going to, as I say, just switch automatically between these different profiles, which in a sense is a really great feature, isn't it? Because then whatever application you're in, you've got the Loupe Deck all ready to use for that particular application. And so if I come into like the After Effects one, these ones are all built in when you first get it. So this one's got a series of After Effects tools in here, and then you've got this one for Audition and Photoshop and Illustrator, lots of different ones here. The only issue that I've got with that is I don't actually like this particular behavior of the Loupe Deck. I don't like it when it's going to automatically switch for me. And the reason being that I spend a lot of time either in meetings or making videos for either this channel or for some training courses and stuff like that I'm doing. And so I actually often want the Loupe Deck to be controlling something other than the active application. If I'm in a meeting, for example, and want to be able to have control of the zoom, but I'm going to go into Excel to start talking about some boring figures or stats or something like that. Or maybe I'm doing a screen demo where I want to be able to control Ecamm Live with the Loupe Deck, but I'm going to be showing something in Photoshop or some other application. I don't want it that when I click into that application to do the demonstration, Loupe Deck is going to change for me. So that is something that I immediately went to switch off. So I switched off the dynamic mode, so it doesn't do that switching automatically. And that is exactly the same as with Stream Deck. With Stream Deck, you have the option of having things flicking between profiles automatically. I also don't use that in there either. Well, that's fine. Okay, so in Stream Deck, all I did was I just created my own profiles, and then we've got the button to change profiles so that you can just press the button on the Stream Deck to change to the profile. So when I am actually wanting to do some real work in Photoshop, in Excel or something like that, I just press the button on my Stream Deck and it changes over to that profile. The trouble with this is these are now basically you can't switch to these profiles from the device itself. You have to open up the app. There is, however, an option in the menu. If I come up to the menu bar in here, which you can just see the bottom of it, there is actually a button here to change profile. So you'd think that would list all of your profiles. No, it only lists the profiles within the profile that you're already in. What on earth does that mean? Well, if you come down to After Effects, this is where it just starts getting weird for me, is here we've got the After Effects profile, okay? But within that, there is 3 dots here. I could actually add another profile within my After Effects profiles. So if I created a new After Effects profile and added a new empty profile and called it Profile 2, like that, now we've got 2 profiles. Is this going to crash again? Now we've got 2 profiles within After Effects. So if I click on this little drop down here, this is After Effects Profile 2. So if I come into the drop down from the menu bar for Loupe Deck and go down to the change profiles, I've basically got either the original After Effects profile or the After Effects Profile 2. So that is just another layer of confusion for me as to why do they have these multiple different profiles within profiles. It just seems bizarre that you can't go up to the menu bar to switch them. So what that means is if you wanted to have this dynamic mode off, but you did want to use all of these really great built-in profiles already built out with all of these functions, there's no way to actually access them without opening up this app and then clicking on the button, and then also presumably coming in here and saying, well, actually, I don't want Profile 2. I want to come and actually go back to this original one like this. It's just weird. It's just totally weird. And as I say, all of these great profiles that have been built out. So I do use Photoshop. So let's have a little look at the Photoshop profile. Here we've got the Photoshop profile. Basically, I never use this, and the reason is because I never want to have to go through the hassle of opening up this particular app to then switch to that one, and I also never want to have this dynamic mode toggled on or off, because once again, to toggle this on and off, you have to actually come into this app to do it. It would be really great if even just this was in the menu bar. So think about having the Loupe Deck Live menu bar in the same way that we've got this change profile. Wouldn't it be great to just have an option here to toggle dynamic mode on and off, so that when I am actually working and I want it to switch between things, the dynamic mode would switch between them. But then when I start recording or I go into a meeting, I can just press a button to toggle it off. But no, unfortunately, you can't. So without having the friction of opening up this app every time, you basically can't do it. So, okay, let's move on from this little bugbear of mine, and let's go and have a little look at the actions that we've got in, for example, Photoshop. What you'll notice in here is that we've got a Photoshop plugin. Oh, and by the way, before we do that, let me just come back, because if you are someone who is using this dynamic mode, what they have done is they have improved the process of adding in new profiles. So if you are using this application profiles, you can click on Find More App Profiles, and this will open up the new Loupe Deck Market Place. And from there, you can come in and look at the profiles. As I say before, as I mentioned earlier, rather, at the in the previous version, you would click that link and it would take you through to a website, and then from the website you would have to go and download the correct profile for your device and operating system, and then you would have to go and manually import it. Whereas now you can basically do this with the click of a button. So we can look at all the different profiles here that we've got for different applications, and then install those. So if I wanted to, for example, install the DaVinci Resolve profile for my device, I can just click on this install. And then if I come back over to the device, you'll see it says preparing installation. So it's just going to install it. One minor weird thing about this is the DaVinci Resolve plugin, or sorry, DaVinci Resolve profile that is obviously going to control DaVinci Resolve. That's what it's for. And yet it's still asking me to select an application. Now, I don't actually have DaVinci Resolve. It was just an example, but I would have to go in and pick the application. And yet it does do exactly the same, even if you have the app on your device already. So it's kind of like one extra step that you would think, well, why do I need to myself go in and actually connect it to the application that this is intended for? In the same way, you know, rather with Stream Deck, when you download a plugin from the marketplace there, or a profile, it doesn't then ask you what application you want to use this with, because it is for the application that it is intended for. All they need to do is add in that extra step of linking it to, in this case, DaVinci Resolve.app in the applications folder, and we should be good to go. So I don't know quite why they're making me make that connection. But in any case, let's just come back to this, and you'll notice here in the plugins section at the top, we've got these three base ones that are always there. So we've got the desktop actions, we've got the navigation, and also we've got the custom, where you're going to create your own actions. But you'll notice here we have got this Photoshop plugin. So that's great, isn't it? Because now we have actually got all of these different actions for Photoshop that we can use. So adjustment layers and all that sort of stuff. You can also download, there is a plugin for Photoshop as well, which helps to make the connection between all these things. So you would need that as well. But look at this, we don't have to go through and create all of these things ourselves, because there is a Photoshop plugin. So what you would assume then is, given that we're not going to be using these automatic ones and there's no way to actually trigger them without opening the app, I just want to build out my own profile, which is what we're doing here. If I go back to my test profile, so what I want to do is get all of those pre-made plugins for Photoshop, or those pre-made actions, just drop it in here and be able to add in, you know, whatever Photoshop actions I want in here. Except you can't. It's just totally ludicrous, because the only plugins that you can use over here, if I click on this little button here, you've basically got the option of Ecamm Live, Twitch, Philips Hue, Spotify, OBS Studio, or the MIDI plugin. And it will tell you which ones are available. So I could technically use the MIDI plugin. OBS is not installed. This is, by the way, a new addition to the UI since the last version. It does actually tell you this one is ready. Twitch is offline, cannot retrieve user for Philips Hue because I don't use it. And you can basically just toggle off the ones that you do or do not want to use in here. And you'll notice that now it's sort of slimmed down the list of plugins that we've got here. Ecamm Live, as ever, the most comprehensive list of actions and a really great plugin. I'm a little bit biased, obviously, with that, but there's no Photoshop. So where is the Photoshop plugin? Well, if I come into here and go over to the plugins and assets, because I'm sure I've got the Photoshop plugin, and if I click on plugins, I've got 15. Yes, I certainly have. I've got Adobe After Effects, Audition. These are all the plugins. We've just seen the Ecamm Live one, and we've also got the Photoshop one there. So I should have the Photoshop one available, or the Premiere Pro one available. But unfortunately, these are not universal, so I can't actually add these into that that area there. It's so frustrating. They've gone to the trouble of creating all of these actions really in depth with lots of different things. But if I create my own profile, I can't actually access them. I can only access them through this profile for the app itself, which I'm not going to be using because I'm not using dynamic mode, and there's no way to actually switch to it from the device. So there is too much friction there. It's a real frustration. Now, it's not a major issue for me because I use Stream Deck. So actually, I use Stream Deck for all of the main sort of stuff that I do. I use the Loupe Deck. I've basically got an extension of my Ecamm Live profile on my Stream Deck. So here, I'll come in to change to my Ecamm Live one. This is basically the profile that I use on my live stream. So my main Stream Deck is controlling the majority of things that I do on with Ecamm Live. But then I've got some additional buttons here. So actually, just to answer your question, Ian, what do I use the dials for? So the dials that I use on here are basically to control levels in Ecamm Live. So this one is for my mic. So if I turn this one, it will actually control the mic up and down, or at least it should do if I have it set correctly. So this should slide up and down. And then there's other ones in here for the movie volume, system volume, sound effects. So for Ecamm, you can basically control all of the levels. You can also control the levels of the guests. So if you're in interview mode, guest 1, guest 2, guest 3, guest 4. Whoops daisy, please start Loupe Deck, restart Loupe Deck. Never mind, I'll do that afterwards. So that is basically the dials. Although there are 6 dials, you actually get multiple pages. I think it's 10 pages of dials. So basically, the little I've just noticed my Loupe Deck's now gone off. This area down here on the side of the Loupe Deck is actually a touch screen that allows you to swipe. So just in the same way that you can swipe across the screen to reveal multiple different pages of actions on here. And it looks like I need to restart my Loupe Deck, as it's saying. So what I'll do is I'll just quickly come out of here. So just as you can do multiple pages on Stream Deck and with Loupe Deck for the actual buttons themselves, you can also do that with the dials as well. Getting very distracted here. Let me just restart my Loupe Deck. 1 second. Obviously, a few little issues with the update, perhaps. Just coming back to your question then, not sure why you need a Loupe Deck. You don't really need a Loupe Deck. I'm guessing that you've got a Rodecaster as well. The one thing that I would use the Loupe Deck for is for controlling volumes and stuff like that, because I don't use a Rodecaster, and so it can control various different levels and stuff like that. I do also use it for Photoshop. So the few things that I have programmed myself manually for it is the like brush sizes and stuff like that. So I've got the Loupe Deck Live. The Loupe Deck CT is basically the same as the Loupe Deck Live, but it's just got this extra large dial at the bottom, so I can see that being good for editing, as a sort of jog wheel, if you like, going through the timeline, and then a few extra buttons, but just not necessary for my kind of thing, because obviously the zero edits thing with me. So I have got my Loupe Deck back up now. So yeah, basically these actions that you've got here, if I just in fact switch over to a slightly different view, come to this one. You can see how I've got a number of different, get my mic out of the way, I've got a number of different actions associated with these dials, but this is actually a swipe touch screen, so I can swipe up to reveal a whole new set of actions for the dials. So that's basically how that works. So I've talked about the profiles and how they don't really make sense to me, and the fact that then we've got these plugins that are just you've got basically global plugins versus app specific plugins, and so some of these plugins are just not global, which is a real shame, because I'd just love to be able to create. I just want to create my own profile with my own set of actions and things like that, and that can control any app that you can legitimately control with the device. The other thing that is slightly confusing as well, if I just come back to profiles just for a moment, whilst we've got those main profiles here, the like this Ecamm Live profile, for example. Let me just come back into that Photoshop one, bearing in mind that with the profiles, has this got more than one? Yeah, with the profiles, we've got that issue, like I said, of profiles within profiles, which is a little bit confusing. You've also got what are called workspaces, and workspaces are almost like a profile within a profile as well, because it basically a profile will give you a completely new set of all of these controls. So all of the buttons, all of the dials, all of the buttons across at the bottom. You've also got, though, workspaces, and a workspace is essentially, if I create a new one, a workspace is essentially, I can't see what that's saying. Choose your mode for your workspace. Test again. Click like that. A workspace is essentially another blank set of buttons and dials, except these ones here are persistent across all workspaces within that particular profile. And this is basically so that if you're in a particular work mode, like a particular application, you might have different groupings of things for, maybe some are for working with layers, maybe some are working with different brushes or things like that. And so you can have a different workspace depending on what it is you're doing as well. So this confusion for me between, well, why would you have for example, an Adobe Audition profile? Let's go back to that one. But we could actually have multiple different Adobe Audition profiles. And then you've got these different workspaces. So editing, tracks, states, workspaces, windows, view. And so it's got all these different nested sort of things. And again, it's just a little bit on the weird side. So yeah, that is another thing that is a little bit confusing. So let's have a little look, though, then at the marketplace and some of my issues with this. I'm glad something's making sense, because the interface itself doesn't make a huge amount of sense, and yeah, convincing you not to use one. But if you've got something that's got dials on, one thing I'm really interested to try is the is it called Monogram? Let me think. I know Keely knows what it is. I can't just remember offhand. The other thing that's basically a device with dials. If I had that with the... Here's me convincing myself about some more gear that I need to acquire. But the Monogram Creative Suite basically has a series of modular dials and buttons and things like that. So actually, a lot of these dials I could probably do with that. Now that I have got this set up, by the way, yeah, it is the Monogram console. Thank you, Keely, for that. So yeah, the way that I have this set up, actually, I've got a little device that basically holds the two of them together. So if I come back over to this, I'll just show you my Franken deck just briefly, and then I'll touch on the actual store itself. So if I come down to my my top-down shot here, I basically have these two devices connected together like this. So it's basically the whoops daisy, get that out of the way. It's basically two devices that are mounted sort of together on a little stand. So for me, this gives me all the controls for Ecamm Live, and then I've got my dials there. And I only really use Loupe Deck with Ecamm for controlling levels and things like that, and then basically giving me some extra buttons to work with. So let's have a little look, though, at the marketplace, because I've got a couple of issues with that as well. How do you use the widgets is a question from Mr. High Life. Great to see you here. What are the widgets? So let's have a little look. The widgets down at the bottom here are pretty limited, really. It is it would help if I was sharing my screen, wouldn't it? Pretty limited, really. We've got widgets, which is one to show beats per minute. Bell, I'm not sure exactly what that does, and then we've got a stopwatch function as well. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see if there's any way to add new widgets in, or what those might be. But for me, those aren't really particularly relevant, so I'm not really using those at all, actually. Got 99 purchases and a console ain't one. Well, that's the same as me, to be honest. I've got too many other things to be thinking about directing finances towards at the moment. So yeah, let's have a little look though at the store or the marketplace, because I appreciate, by the way, that this is just still in its infancy. So I don't want to be too critical of it, because it's just a version 1. It's literally just come out yesterday. So as I say, I'm not going to be too critical, and it's about basically giving feedback on these things. If you can stand maintaining using it, because I know that Keely, you sent yours back, and I've heard other people have. Then yeah, it's a if you can stay on with it and keep using it, then definitely giving feedback to the developers to help them is the way to go. So I shall obviously be submitting all of my detailed feedback and suggestions. Let me have a look at this. The weather widget, and there's a new speed test widget. Is there really? Is that in? Now, how do I get to that then? I'm not seeing that in my desktop actions, or is it somewhere else? Or do you mean the plugins, perhaps? Let me have a look. I'll have a little look. I'm still not quite sure exactly what you mean by that one. Certainly in the widgets list that I've got, then I couldn't see it there. So if we go to the plugins though, or we'll start with the profiles. One of the things that's a little bit strange about this, or not, I suppose it's not really strange, but it lists all of the ones that you can't even use. So for example, here we've got all of the plugins included. It will tell you whether it's for Mac and Windows. I get why they've done that. It's just, one platform to host all of these things. But for example, in Stream Deck on the Mac, you don't see the you don't actually see the the ones that aren't available for the Mac. So it's just a bit weird in that respect. Okay, the plugins, got you. I'll come to the plugins in a moment. I see what you're saying. So yeah, here in the profiles, it's showing me the ones for Mac and PC when I am on a Mac. The other thing about this is if I click into one of these, now which one was it that I looked at previously? If I click into, I know this Notion one, it says it's in here. If I click into this Notion plugin, what it says is compatible devices, and it says Loupe Deck CT there. Whereas what I noticed was I could actually install stuff that was still on a Loupe Deck Live. Now I don't know what they mean by that, whether they mean rather that it has got compatibility for all of the different functions in Loupe Deck CT, which is the larger device. But when I downloaded it and tried it, it would actually still work on Loupe Deck Live, and it would add in those functions on the screen there. So it's making me think that it's not actually available. But as you can see from here, I did actually install that one, and it's downloaded, and there it is, the Notion profile. But once again, it's a little bit useless with the whole issue of not being able to switch profiles from the device itself. So that is just another little strange thing there in terms of it's saying the device compatibility is Loupe Deck CT, but it is actually working on Loupe Deck Live. I've noticed that with a few of them where they are making out that it is just only for the Loupe Deck CT, but it does actually work on Loupe Deck Live. So we'll see about that. Then coming to the plugins, Mr. Highlife was just mentioning it. What's your name, by the way, just so that I can address you properly? But the plugins, yeah, here we've got a number of different plugins. So there is one speed test here, and the voice meter and so on. The issue that I've got here is these are all Windows plugins, so they don't actually work for the Mac. I am a Mac only person, so sorry about that. I can't try those out. But those plugins are only, in fact, all of these. So there's 10. There was 6 yesterday. So literally, last 12 hours ago, there was 6. So they have added in 4 overnight for me. So early morning here. So definitely there is more being added in. So I'm really hoping that now that they got this Loupe Deck Marketplace, it will be a way for more people to add more plugins, and it would be great to see what those come in at. Yeah, I haven't really been able to try the process of installing those. Is that Bo? Great to see you, Bo. So yeah, that is the plugins. Like I say, it will be good to see when they start adding in some other ones. I can't really give those a good old test. And then finally, we've got this icon packs section here as well. And as I've mentioned, I think this is really good. This is one thing that I'm really good to see, making it easy for people to get new icons for their devices. There's some here specific from this Icon City. I've not checked them out actually. It'd be interesting to go and have a look at them. But they've got some for various different applications. Farming Simulator, Microsoft Flight Simulator, a productivity set. Let's have a little look at that, shall we? Because I am all about the productivity, obviously. And then, yeah, simply just add in just click on install and it will install the icons. If I come back over to the main app, you'll see it says preparing installation, downloading icon pack, and then it is installing them. And then it says installation complete. And you'll find this, once again, if you click on the little button just up at the top, go to plugins and assets, you'll find the icon packs all listed here. So you will actually just have a list of them. So there is that one that we've just downloaded. It gives you a little indication if it's up to date or not. So presumably if they update the icon pack on the device, you will get a little notification that you can add more in, for example. And the way that you actually add in these icon packs, or rather use the icons, I should say. Sorry, yes, I'm also feeling a little that way, Paul, with the lack of Mac stuff in there. But it's early days, so I'm not going to complain too much about that. The way that you access these apps, as I mentioned before, is for any one of these actions. When you select the action, you'll see the icon down there. You can click on the icon, and then the icon library is where you access all of these icon packs. And this is something that I feel is better than on the Stream Deck in terms of the way that it organizes them all, and you can just click through and then just select the particular icon that you want. So that is pretty good, really. And the single click install that you get from here, that works pretty well for the icon packs, obviously. The plugins, again, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see once we get some Mac ones that we can use, so that I can see how that actually works in terms of installing the plugin. Presumably then it would just sit just up here, and then also we've got the profiles, and there is just that one thing. It is a sort of one-click, whoops daisy, wrong scene. It is a one-click install to a point, but there is just that weird thing of when you go to click on one of these to install it, that you then have to manually link it to the app itself that you want to link it to, when it's obviously clearly, you know, specifically for a certain app. So that's just a little bit of a weird thing there. So that is basically a summary of my little nitpicky points about the user interface of the Loupe Deck. And as I say, it's something that's a real shame, to be honest, because I am not the only one who's had these issues or these feelings about the way that the interface works. And, you know, I do know very, very smart, intelligent people who've sent theirs back because of just the friction involved in getting up to speed with it. And I would certainly recommend the Stream Deck to somebody far sooner than recommending the Loupe Deck, because I do feel that I would be, if I recommended the Stream Deck to someone, I can feel like I can just, you know, here's the Stream Deck, this is how you do it, and I wouldn't get any more questions. Whereas if I recommended the Loupe Deck to someone, I can see me being on the phone to them, saying, them calling and saying, how would you do this? How would you do that? And me being tech support for it. So I like to recommend things that are easy to use, and I do feel like the Loupe Deck's got a little way to go before it quite gets there yet. So as I say, those are my my little issues with it. So today what I'm going to be doing is actually re-recording my beginner's guide, which I finished off yesterday. Now that we've got all of these, now that we've got all these new changes, it should be a lot smoother to make it this time round than it was previously, because, as I say, I did find it difficult to find the best way to explain all of this stuff. But in any case, if you are watching on the replay, then I'm going to leave a link to that coming up shortly. Thanks to everyone who popped in, and great to see you in here. Have a safe flight back, Ian, if you are still watching, and if you're not have to run to your plane just yet. But yeah, great to see you all. Let's have a little look at what Keely's just said. I'm sure this is something very smart and intelligent. I started Tech Life as a consultant supporting Microsoft products. I never had a shortage of work. I discovered this is so true, isn't it? It's when I switched to the Mac 16, 17 years ago, I'd been a Windows user, you know, for years, and got sort of learned the way to do things, and you sort of feel that is the way that things have to be done. This is the way that computers work. And then when I came over to the Mac, I suddenly realized that, like, oh, there's another complete world here, and another way of doing it. Very similar, I might add, to trying to use OBS and then discovering Ecamm Live, and then thinking like, oh, this is so much simpler. And I feel like I've done the opposite with Stream Deck and Loupe Deck. I started with Stream Deck and it seemed so simple, and then now I've come over to Loupe Deck and it was just a little bit confusing and and difficult. So yeah, totally agree with that. So yeah, thanks for popping by. It'd be great to hear about the PC side of stuff. I mean, I haven't just slated PCs a little bit, but it would be great to hear, what those other widgets and plugins for the PC are like, and get a little glimpse of what we've got to expect when they come to the Mac as well. But yeah, great to see you. Thanks for stopping by. And for anyone watching on the replay, I will leave a link to my Loupe Deck playlist over on the right-hand side. And any moment now, or any day now, there will be that beginner's guide uploaded too.